Hi everyone, my name is Tyler and I'm here to help you get into your new 40k army. 40k as a hobby can be very expensive to get into, but my goal with this series is to help you get a full army going without having to break the bank. Before we dive into the list, let's talk about some basic rules that we're going to be using for the list building process here. Our first goal is going to be to keep it affordable and utilize box deals. For everything that we're going to be looking at today, we're going to be looking at it from an MSRP value from Games Workshop themselves. Now, I don't recommend buying everything MSRP from Games Workshop. Often, local hobby stores, eBay, Amazon, things of that nature will have much better deals for the kits that I'm about to show you. Our second goal is that we're going to be making the list in steps, starting at 500 points and working our way up to 1,000 points, 1,500 points, and 2,000 points. Our third rule is we're going to be avoiding Forge World and Finecast. Many Forge World models are often very pricey for the points that they provide you on the table, and the resin used can be hard to work with, especially for beginners. As far as Finecast goes, I just don't think that they're quite as high quality as the plastic models that you can get otherwise. Our fourth goal is to aim to make lists with decent competitive viability. We're going to be trying to make lists that can do well at casual tournaments, in your games with friends, or maybe even get you some wins at major tournaments. Our fifth and final rule is the most important one. Just because I don't mention a model in my list, it doesn't mean that it isn't good. The most important thing that you can do is collect models that you think are cool. There's an entire side of the hobby that has nothing to do with playing, and if you don't like the models you're painting and building, you're not going to get the most out of this hobby. Today we're going to talk about the Sisters of Battle. The Sisters of Battle are your regular women, except equipped with power armor and forced to face the horrors of the 41st millennium. But they've also cranked their religious zealotry up to 11. They are the militarized faction of the Church of the Imperium who worships the Emperor as a god, and they believe that they will be able to cleanse the unclean and the heretics through the power of the Flamer, the Melta, and the Bolter. They will kill you on the suspicion that you might be a heretic. They won't wait for an investigation. If they think anything about you is heretical, your neighbor is heretical, your dog is heretical, they will come straight for you. The Sisters of Battle believe that the greatest honor is to become a martyr, dying in the name of the Emperor and the service of their sisters. But if a Sister of Battle has their faith waver, they will become a Sister Repentia and must go into battle with suicidal resolve to attempt to have their sins forgiven. So why might you want to consider collecting a Sisters of Battle army for yourself? Well, for starters, they just got their codex not that long ago, and it is incredible. It is very flavorful, and it fits a lot of what you want your Sisters of Battle to be able to do. And it is so good that even after some pretty hefty points nerfs to the army, they are still performing as a top tier faction. And even with that, they still have tons of low point units, making mission and objective play amazing for the army. They have a lot of incredible looking models with some of the most iconic designs in 40k, with what being one of the best armies to kit bash because of the similarities between a lot of their models. They're also generally a great short-range army, regularly fluctuating between having really great close-range shooting and being incredibly good at melee. Their units are going to hit a lot harder than their points would normally indicate, which does make them feel like more of a trading army where your low-point units are going to pick off something that is way more expensive before they die. But there is great synergy between these units to make that more doable. Because of the strength of Miracle Dice, giving you high expected outcomes when it comes to damage, anything that moves the needle of how consistently you can get that damage through is going to reap massive rewards. Rules that increase strength, AP, number of attacks, and mobility feel all that much better in Sisters of Battle. And the Sisters of Battle reward this trading by generating even more Miracle Dice, which let you effectively cheat in a dice game with a specific outcome that you want to have happen. It creates this very cool feedback loop where you are trading away your weak units to kill strong units. Then you get dice to kill even more strong units because your opponent killed those weak units. So with all those amazing qualities, why would you ever not want to collect the Sisters of Battle? Well, for starters, Sisters are one of the most expensive armies that you can possibly collect. Even after the points nerfs that came with their codex, they rose up to 1.75 points per dollar on average. There are very few units in the army that can reach even a reasonable value and get to about 2.5 points per dollar, which is about where they cap out. It's really not that affordable for an army, and if you're just buying things piecemeal, most of the time you're going to come out to well over $1,000 just to run an army. The aforementioned kit bashing opportunities are also kind of required to save money with this army. Most of the characters that you can find are under 1.5 points per dollar. That means that they're just not simply affordable if you're trying to build up your army in the first place. Many kits also don't have the required number of weapons built into the kits and will need to be spliced from other boxes. It's not that uncommon for you to want to run 4 Meltas or 4 Flamers in a unit and then not have enough of those in the box to be able to run. But painting Sisters also just takes a lot of patience due to how intense the trim is and how unique their models are. The models are some of the most detail-heavy aesthetics in the entire game, and for better or worse, that does mean that they take a lot more effort to have look as nice as you can get them. They're also a horde army, and generally those are going to take more time to move during the game, and can also be harder to store and transport to the store, but also hide from lines of sight in the game. Now, while Sisters are more elite than most Horde armies, they still are going to rely on having a lot of bodies on the table. They can also struggle a lot against higher toughness and higher save targets due to the generally low strength and AP of weapons across a lot of their units. There are exceptions and there are combos that can save this, but if you're not setting up those combos properly, then you're just not going to be able to punch up. But it would be okay if they weren't as frail as they are. With most of them being toughness 3 with 1 wound and fairly low movement speed, this means that they are going to rely heavily on transports to get up the field quickly and safely. And unfortunately, coming back to the cost, Sisters of Battle transports are particularly expensive to buy. They're also just, at the end of the day, one of the highest skill floor armies in the game. If you aren't used to the rules of 40k, you are going to struggle early on because you are going to make a lot of mistakes where you put them out in the open thinking that they might live just to watch your entire army get evaporated. The army rule for the Sisters of Battle is Acts of Faith. If you are running a Sisters army, you will gain a miracle dice at the start of your turn and every time a Sisters unit from your army is destroyed. Every time that happens, you roll a d6 and you get to store whatever that dice was off to the side in a separate pool that you do not roll for the rest of the game pretty much. Now, anytime you need to make a roll with any dice, you can take one of those dice and you can substitute it for the roll. This can be something like instead of rolling a d6 on a Melta that goes through, you just immediately pick up a 6 from your miracle dice pool and you put it in. If you think that, you only need a 3 to wound and you've got some 3s, 4s, maybe 5s that are sitting in your pool that you don't really want to use for damage, well, pop it in and just get that damage straight out of the way. You can use them for charge rolls, advance rolls, battle shocks. Doesn't really matter. It's just a good way to cheat at a dice game, which is good. It is why Eldar were so powerful, and it's why Sisters are currently as powerful as they are. The first detachment that we're going to be looking at for the Sisters of Battle today is the Bringers of Flame detachment, with their detachment rule, Fervor Purgation. Every ranged weapon in the Sisters of Battle army is going to have the Assault keyword, and if you are targeting something within 12 inches, you add 1 to the strength characteristic of the attack. Now, I play a lot of Tau. I play a lot of Monka and Tau. And I know that having Assault on every single gun in your army is crazy good. Being able to have Assault on every single gun in your army for 5 turns is even better. And being able to add 1 strength might not sound like that much, but there are a lot of very important breakpoints that Sisters meet with this. From Flamers going up to strength 5, Meltas going up to strength 10, and everything in between. For the first 500 point list we're going to be looking at, we're going to be going and picking up a combat patrol of Sisters of Battle, and we're going to be picking up 2 boxes of Seraphim. We're going to be using this to make a Canoness with Jump Pack with a Ministorum Hand Flamer and a Power Weapon, 3 units of 3 Arcoflagellants, 10 Dominion Sisters with Simulacrum Imperialis, Condemner Bolt Gun, Power Weapon, and 4 Flamers. Then we're going to be having 1 10 Sister Squad of Seraphim with 12 Bolt Pistols, 8 Hand Flamers, and that's going to be all that we can fit for here. Now, one thing that is going to be very important for you to be aware of is we are not going to use these Sacrosancts at any point in this list. Instead, we are going to use their bodies, backpacks, and heads for characters later in the build to save money down the line. It's going to make this cost a lot up front as we get into that first 500-point game, but it's going to save us money down the line. In order to get the Canoness with Jump Pack, since it's not a model that we can traditionally get right now, we're going to be using one of the spare Zephyrin backpacks to convert the Canoness. At 1,000 points, we're going to go and want to make sure that we pick up 2 more boxes of Battle Sister Squads to become Dominion Sisters. We're going to pick up 1 Castigator, and we're going to be picking up a box of Novitiates. With the Sacrosanct bodies that we have left over from the Combat Patrol, we're going to be using it to build ourselves a Palatine in addition, who is going to be having a Plasma Pistol and the Iron Surplus of Saint Estalia. Then the Canoness with Jump Pack is going to have the Fire and Fury enhancement. This is just pure money when it is being ran with the 10 Seraphim with their Shoot and Scoot. We're going to have to cut one of the Arcoflagellants, but we're going to be bringing in the 2 extra Dominion squads. One of them is going to be with Melta-Guns, one of them is going to be with Flamers. For the Sister Novitiate squad, it's going to be Plasma Pistol, Power Weapon, Sacred Banner, Simulacrum Imperialis, and Flamers. Now the Castigator is an interesting choice because both the Battle Cannon and the Auto Cannon are completely viable depending on what strength profiles you are looking at and what you really need to kill. Because we have so many Flamers, I chose for us to go with the slightly higher strength option so that we could have a better time into tanks by going with the Battle Cannon, Hunter Killer Missile, and the Storm Bolter. Now the Castigator's +1 AP on ranged weapons is going to be great for this army, because if you do need to fire into something like, say, Custodes, you can get all of your Flamers to now be AP1. At 1,500 points, we're going to be going and picking up Morven Vahl, a box of Paragon Warsuits, and a Retributor squad. This is going to give us Morven Vahl leading a unit of Paragon Warsuits. They're going to have grenade launchers, multi-meltas, and their warblades. Now on the surface, it might look like the War Mace is the objectively better choice, but it's not necessarily. Both are fine, but I like the warblades a little bit more. With +1 to hit and +1 to wound against vehicles, on top of Morven Vahl's reroll hits and reroll wounds, you wind up still being able to get plenty of attacks through with the Warblade without needing the War Mace. Is the War Mace a little bit better against those big vehicles? Yes, it absolutely is. But I think that you are more likely to get stuck up on infantry and want the extra attacks from the Warblades. Now, Eagle-Eyed Sisters players are going to see that the Retributor squad has 4 multi-meltas and think, wait a minute, that is illegal, because you cannot get 4 multi-meltas in a box of Retributors. How are you getting this? Well, when I said this is an army that requires a lot of kit bashing, this is also part of what I was talking about. The extra multi-meltas for the Retributors can be made from kit bashing the Flamers and the Meltas that are coming from the Battle Sister squad that we aren't using as we're using the Flamers. You're going to have to go into the description, but I will have a Reddit post that is describing the process for you. At 2,000 points, we're going to be going and we're going to be picking up a second Castigator. We're going to be picking up the Triumph of St. Catherine, and then we're going to be adding in a Calidus Assassin. Nothing here is going to look that crazy different. Everything is pretty much the exact same loadouts from what you saw, as there's not really that much variety with what we can do. The Castigator, like I said, can go into an autocannon, but it's really a toss-up on what you want. I just chose the battle cannon. The Dialogus is going to be the thing that is going to stand out, but we can easily kit bash the Dialogus with one of the leftover bodies from the Sacrosancts, and the hand that is holding a script from the Novitiates. As the Dialogus traditionally has a large book, this acts as an acceptable alternative for most people. Now, I tried very hard to be able to fit Immolators or Rhinos into this list, but at the end of the day, this was just that list where it was just so pricey with the Immolators that I could not make it fit. not without starting to really affect the idea and the identity of this by adding in things like more Paragon war suits that don't have Morvenval leading it, or things like Repentia or extra Arcoflagellants, which don't really fit that well in this detachment. The second detachment that we're going to be looking at is going to be the Blood of Martyrs. Every time a Sisters model from your army makes an attack, you add 1 to the hit roll if the model's unit is below its starting strength. And you get to add 1 to the wound roll if it's also below half strength. This isn't as immediately powerful as Bringers of Flame is, but with a lot of the characters and especially some of the durability on some of the suits and vehicles you can run with this detachment, and the fact that you can bring back characters with less than half their wounds remaining, you can start to get a lot of power from this if you set it up in the right spots. For the second 500 point list, we're going to be going and picking up a combat patrol still. We're going to be picking up that second Seraphim box, but because we aren't getting the extra strength out of our flamers, we're just going to go and pick up the box of novitiates instead of jumping straight into the second Seraphim. Just like I mentioned before, we're not going to be using the Sacrosancts at any point in this list. They're just there to be extra bodies and backpacks and heads for kit bashing. And we're going to be building the Dialogus with the leftover bodies from the Sacrosancts, as well as the hand holding the script from the Novitiates. Now this list is going to have a Canoness on foot, the Dialogus, 2 units of 3 Arcoflagellants, a 10 Sisters Dominant Squad unit, 5 Seraphims with their hand flamers, and then the 10 Novitiate Sisters. As we move up into 1,000 points, we're going to be going and picking up that second Seraphim unit. We're going to be grabbing a Castigator, and we're going to be buying a box of Penitent Engines. The Penitent Engines are going to be built as Mortifiers with their Flamers and the Twin Penitent Buzzblades, and the Canoness with Jump Pack is going to be built out of the leftover Sacrosanct bodies and the jump packs from the Sephirim or Zephyrim that you didn't wind up building. Castigator is still going to have the battle cannon and all of its regular stuff, and nothing here should look too crazy different from what you were expecting in the previous list. At 1,500 points, it's going to be very similar to what we did at the last 1,500 point mark. We're going to be picking up a second Castigator, Morvenval, and Paragon Warsuits. I've already done the spiel on all of these units in the previous section, so you get the idea. The Warblades are still good, Grenade Launcher is good, Multi-Meltas on the Paragon Warsuits are all good, Morvenval is excellent, and the Cascadator with the Battle Cannon is fine. To round out the Hallowed Martyr detachment, we're going to be going and picking up a final Castigator, a second box of Mortifiers, and then we're also going to be picking up Celestine the Living Saint. Celestine is a great example of what characters can do in this detachment. Because she will very frequently come back to life after she gets taken down, she will be in a great spot to be able to have that +1 to hit and +1 to wound. Same thing with Morvenval. If you spend the CP to bring her back, she will be able to have +1 to hit, +1 to wound, even with the Paragon Warsuits gone, while still having all of the good general weapons that she is phenomenal with. The Castigators are going to be 1 autocannon, 2 battle cannons, because we have enough variety now where I don't want us to just be battle cannons on these Castigators. And in a pinch, if you really needed to, you could take the gun off of one of the Castigators and run it as a Rhino. Same thing with the previous list. The 2 Mortifiers are going to be running around as 2 separate 2-man units and just being generally good and annoying. And Paragon Warsuits are good Paragon Warsuits. The last detachment we're going to look at today is the Penitent Host with their detachment rule Desperate for Redemption. At the start of the battle round, you get to pick 1 of 3 abilities, and that ability becomes active for every single Penitent unit in your army. They can either get +3 to the move characteristic, they can get +1 strength and +1 attacks on the charge, or they can get a fight on death on a 2-up. I just want to say real quick how much I love the way that they set this up, because it works out pretty perfectly for the order that you want to do things in. You want that first turn to be using movement to get into the middle of the board and stage and get ready for the fight. You want that turn 2 to be going in and actually making the charge and getting those attacks. And then turn 3 is when you are going to have been charged in retaliation, and you're going to want to be able to punch them back after your model dies. It's pretty nice the way that they laid this out. The list building for the Penitent Host is going to be very different from what we saw earlier, and a big part of that is because the Penitent Host models are actually the most cost efficient in Sisters of Battle, which caught me very off guard. Because of this, we can skip the Combat Patrol entirely and go straight into buying a Palatine, a box of Arcoflagellants, and 2 boxes of Repentia. Now, the Palatine has to take the Catechism of Divine Penitence. You don't really have any other choice, because otherwise they can't lead any of the penitent units. So that is going to be how we get her to lead either the Arcoflagellants or the Repentia. For the Repentia, we're going to have 1-5 and 1-10 because we just don't have the points to fit everything here. And 10 Arcoflagellants is good because, unlike in the previous detachments where the Arcoflagellants are there to kind of go hold objectives or die for miracle dice, they actually can pack a serious punch in this detachment. At 1,000 points, we're going to be going and picking up a second box of Arcoflagellants. We're going to be picking up a box of the Mortifier Penitent Engine combo. And then, because this is so cost efficient as a list, we can actually go pick up 3 Rhinos. With this setup, we can now run the 2 tense Repentia squads and be totally happy. We've got the 2 Penitent Engines, which are going to be able to very quickly advance and charge up the board, which is great with the extra movement from the early turns. And then the Rhinos are going to be able to fit all of the 10 sister squads that we have between the Arcoflagellants and the Repentia. We do have to run 1 3 Arcoflagellant squad because at the end of the day, there is a point limit. You could cut one of the Rhinos and maybe fit this in, but I think that this is going to give you the better overall choice since the Arcoflagellants and the Repentia are very frail. At 1,500 points, we actually only have to go and pick up 2 boxes. We're going to buy a box of Paragon Warsuits, and we're going to be buying a box of Repentia. This is going to wind up giving us the 2 units of 10 Arcoflagellants, the 3 units of 10 Repentia, so 50 of these great melee sisters at once. We can fit 3 of those units in the Rhinos. And then with the Paragon Warsuits, we've got the Grenade Launcher, the Warblades, and the Multi-Meltas. If you are planning on sticking at 1,500 points and not going up to 2,000, you might want to actually consider the War Mace here instead, but because at 2,000 points, spoiler alert, we're picking up Morven Vol again, I chose the Warblades. To round out our 2,000 point list, we're going to be picking up Morven Vol, like I said. We're going to be going and picking up a second box of the Penitent Engine Mortifiers, and we're going to be going and picking up the Triumph of St. Catherine. The buffs that the Triumph of St. Catherine are going to give out are just absolutely ludicrous for this kind of close-range melee army. You sit the Triumph behind a wall close to the midpoint objective, and you string out your Repentia or your Arcoflagellants in a way where you just barely are in range of the buffs. Suddenly, your Arcoflagellants and your Repentia are just blenders that will kill everything in front of them, especially on that turn when they have the +1 attack and +1 strength on every single model in the unit. And hey, you know what? 1 unit of Penitent Engines was pretty good. Let's throw a second one in there. Why not? And that's going to be everything that I have for you today. I was very impressed by the sheer cost efficiency of the Penitent Host and the fact that I could go in and buy really badly priced units like the Rhinos and still be well within an acceptable range for sisters, especially considering where they were at the last time I did this video. Previously, they were very comfortably in that 1050 plus as the most expensive army that I had done, as I didn't do a serious ad mech video at the time. But now they have actually boosted themselves up. Now, I don't want to rate them based entirely off of the Repentia because the Penitent Host is good, it's competitive, and it's fine, but it's not really sisters to me in the same way that some of the other detachments are, as it's lacking a lot of the actual typical sisters units that you would expect to see. Because of that, I am still going to be considering them, but I'm going to be bringing the overall score of the army down on the tier list, and it's still going to be higher than it was, but it's going to be at the bottom of that 900 to 1050 tier, right below the Tau. Big shout out to all of my channel supporters who help make these videos possible, such as Comrade Chin, Alexander Thomas, and everyone else who's been generous enough to support me. If you would like to try and help out the channel, please consider the links in the description where you can either check out the Amazon affiliate link or go support me on Ko-fi. Thank you all for watching.